Newcastle United are effectively owned by Saudi Arabia. Now, what is the point in having money unless you say like, what is the point in being that rich unless you have the capacity to say, you know what, like, Newcastle can just say no. Like, they can just say no to Liverpool. They can say, Alexander Isak is not for sale. He's still got 3 years left on his contract. This isn't 18 months. He's got 3 years left on his contract. And if Newcastle United want to be taken seriously as one of the biggest clubs in the world, which is what they want, you just say no. Say, Liverpool, no, we're not selling Alexander Isak. And you get on the phone to Isak or his agent, and you say, Alex, lad, you get yourself back to training, because if you don't, you will feel the wrath, not just the legal wrath of the fact that you're in a contract, but also we are owned by a Gulf state. Like, you do not want to cross the Saudi Arabian hierarchy, I would imagine, right? Like, if you're going to annoy anyone in football, like, you could piss off Ian Holloway or Stephen Warnock or Gary Neville. Like, that's all fine. But, like, you really, really don't want to get on the wrong side of the Saudis. So, Newcastle, I don't really understand it. You just say no. Just say this is not that complex. You've got the cash. This is like telling your boss, like, just walk it in because you won the lottery and saying, like, I'm out. Like, you've got the money. So do it. Don't. If you actually want to be viewed as a big football club, then you just say no.
This sounds like very much, excuse me, a Dennis from Always Sunny in Philadelphia rant when he says that you take a girl out, you get yourself a nice boat and you go out into the water and you try it on with the girl. And she's not going to say no because of the implication. You're doing that with Alexander Isak. He's not going to kick up a fuss because of the implication with the Saudis. You know, you don't mess with the Saudis. So you just get a. I mean, I wouldn't advise using that as a threat to a football player.
I never said that, Ollie. No, but that's the thing. You don't. It's not even said. It's completely unspoken. It's not a threat. It's just.
Yeah, because of the implication. Yeah, no, I get it. you don't mess with the Saudis. So, yeah. And look, again, if they ever want to sponsor this podcast, I'm all about not messing around with the Saudis. I'll toe the line, left, right, and centre. It's all good. But, yeah, I just don't think we live in that world, though, where a player that's garnering such attention, has had great goal-scoring form, has been anointed by this podcast very early on as the first ever £200 million player. I mean...
Don't want to say I called it, mate, but...
But we are kind of looking at a world where player power is still so strong. And Newcastle have, as you call it, fuck you money in terms of the Saudi state backing. But they're not using fuck you money. And they're not acting like a City. They're not acting like a Chelsea first were when Abramovich kind of walked in. So I always wonder why, and have wondered why the purse strings haven't gone crazy with Newcastle. What the difference is, why the approach from the Saudis here is different to so many other places that they've kind of dipped their toe in, started working financially with. You look at the way they've dealt with TV rights in the last few years and being involved in sports broadcasting. You look at the way they've been involved in other sports. The money's been thrown around left, right and centre, and it's not happening at Newcastle, which I would have looked at and said, if you start throwing the money around as Newcastle, like you do everywhere else, that would actually be somewhere that will garner massive positive attention for you. And at the end of the day, that's one of the reasons why Saudi Arabia is doing this. It's to garner massive positive media attention towards their exploits in global sport and hopefully build some sort of sustainable level of income away from the oil. Getting down the kind of Saudi economic route a bit too much here, but yeah, that's been the question mark of why don't Newcastle act like that? Is it they're trying to be a sustainable style club? And if you're being sustainable, you sell someone like Isak because that's the huge amount of money you'll be able to bring in. If you're going to be, you know, the big fish in the big pond with the big money that you've got, then yeah, you don't let him go and you start spending a shit ton of money to build around him and build a Champions League squad. But don't sit in this middle ground where suddenly Isak's going to be looking and going, well, I want to go and play for the biggest sides in the world. And Newcastle aren't at the moment the biggest side in the world. I want to go and play for a title-winning Liverpool. I want to go and play and be the man at Arsenal to bring them back a Premier League trophy once again. I want to go to a Real Madrid, a Bayern Munich or somewhere like that. And I'm not seeing that level of positive attitude put towards signings at Newcastle United to be that level of a football club. And I can be at that level of a football club as a player, considering the form I'm in right now. And he's got to do what works out for him. And contracts mean
Alexander
nothing.
Isak, Newcastle have delivered you their first trophy in God knows how long, and Champions League football. Like, they could not have done much more. Yes, he's a big part of that puzzle, but they could not have done much more. My main issue, well, one of my issues with this is just the timing of it. You've got 3 years left in the contract. Alexander Isak, you're in a really poor position, actually. Why not wait until next summer? Why not have that season playing Champions League under the lights at St James's Park and have one more season at Newcastle? And then as soon as you get to that last 2 years of the contract, Ollie, that's when the power shifts, right? That's when suddenly the player becomes more powerful than the club, because clubs can't really let players go into the last 2 years, 18 months of their contract, because all of the power's with the player. So why not, if you're Isak, have one more season for Newcastle, score a shitload of goals, and then you've got your choice between Liverpool or Real Madrid or Barcelona or Arsenal. And also then, by the way, the price wouldn't be 150 million, because the minute you go into those last 2 years, suddenly it's kind of nudging. I think then you probably get Isak for 100 million next summer, maybe 95 if he waits, or 90 if he waits like to the last 18 months. So the timing of it's bad. I think he's been really poorly advised. I know footballers just don't care about legacy. And Alexander Isak obviously just doesn't, like, it's just not part of his paradigm. That he doesn't care about any kind of legacy. He's not born in Newcastle, doesn't care. So from him, it's just like, what can I get right now? And also, I think possibly Liverpool have got in his head and his agent's head a little bit here, Ollie, because they've created this kind of, maybe it's now or never for Alexander Isak at Liverpool. And I wonder if that, like, every human's susceptible to that. It's now or never. If you don't do the deal now, it's never going to happen. Ruben Amorim at Man United, right? That got into his head. If I don't move to Man United now, maybe I'm not going to get that contract ever again in the future. So it's now or never. It's obviously spooked him, and we find ourselves in the situation we are in.
But I obviously think with a player as well, that now or never is even more important, because as a player, you have a finite time at the top of your game. And if you're feeling that you're playing the best football of your career at that point, you don't know what's going to happen. He could get crocked second week of the season and have to come back from a massive rehab, and suddenly he's very undesirable to a lot of big sides. He could drop off massively in terms of his form. As I say, Newcastle aren't exactly like a stable, consistent Champions League side, so they could bow out the Champions League really quickly. Difficult to do, I know, when you're a Premier League side, as we saw last year with the new format, but still could potentially happen. You're then not dropping into a Europa League or anything like that, so you're just out of continental football. You're probably not going to be challenging for a Premier League title either. And suddenly Alexander Isak is playing at a mid-level club once again, rather than at one of the big clubs in European football. So players across all sports are encouraged to go get your money and go get what you can as soon as you can, because the career is so finite and you never know what's going to happen. That's the attitude everybody's got now. So it doesn't surprise me. I don't think it's great, but it just doesn't surprise me that Isak is either being advised in this way or is acting in this way.
Predict what's going to happen, Ollie.
He'll still be at Newcastle. I don't think he'll move.
Why? Because Liverpool won't pay the 150.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money. Huge amount of money. I mean, like, I know we're talking about kind of massive transfer fees all the time, but 150 million is still 150 million. Like, it's... And Alexander Isak isn't what even a Luis Suarez was, you know, when he was leaving Liverpool and going off to a Barcelona. He's not a Neymar or anything like that. So is Isak worthy of 150 million? It's hard to really say yes, isn't it? I mean, the level of player you're looking at when you say that sort of figure, you know, Kylian Mbappe kind of money. Isak's not an Mbappe. Now, Mbappe's not necessarily worked out like Real Madrid would have wanted, but yeah, he's not an Mbappe. So,
what Isak is, if you sign Isak for... I agree with you. I actually think he'll be a Newcastle player for one more year. I'm not quite sure I understand why Liverpool have gone a summer too early. But I think if you sign Alexander Isak, you don't sign him to finish third, do you? You don't even sign him to win the Premier League, really, because Liverpool won the Premier League last season. You sign Alexander Isak to win the Champions League. I mean, that's it. It's one of those signings where it's such a gigantic amount of money that unless you win the Champions League, it's possibly not really worth it. So you sign a player like that, or even Florian Wirtz, to be honest. You're signing players like that to win the Champions League. You're not signing that to be in a Premier League title race. So that's the kind of that's why Liverpool would drop that kind of cash. Plus, they've got it, and Liverpool have got the money because they're a well-run football club. And I know that's kind of sacrilege to talk about, but actually, if you look back at the last 10, 15 years, or, you know, since FSG took control of the football club, if you look at the net spend, and I know people don't like talking about net spend, but if you look at it, it's just really boring and really responsible. And they actually, like, they can afford it because the numbers add up. Like, unlike a lot of football clubs, they haven't just thrown money that they don't have. Like, the numbers add up. It makes sense. So that's why Liverpool have got the cash. But anyway, enough about Isak. I agree with you. If I was going to predict, I don't think Liverpool put down 150 million this window. And so I don't think it happens. And you know what? If there's one thing we've learned about football, Ollie, like supporters, people have. I mean, if Isak starts the season well, Ollie scores loads of goals, Newcastle are flying. I think it gets forgotten pretty quickly.
It always does. If he dares kiss the badge though in the first month, that's always irks me when you get players that have all these transfer sagas and all that kind of stuff, and then you get the player who suddenly, oh no, I love the club, I always wanted to be here. You didn't. You definitely didn't.